Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to show you part 3 of our GameMaker top-down shooter tutorial, and we're just going to add some parallax backgrounds and possibly create our shooting mechanic now that we have our movement set up. So we'll go ahead and open up GameMaker Studio 2. And I'm going to be doing this in two ways. One, with a background that I've prepared, and if you guys can follow along and prepare that, then great, you could just use that. And if you don't have the ability or image editor or software to do what I'm going to do to that image, I'm going to show you an alternative way that we can achieve a similar effect. So let's go ahead and open up our space shooter tutorial. And here's our little object that we created last time. And if we hit play on the game, we'll see that we have our movement set up, but not much else. There's a black background actually. Alright, so here's our game and here's our movement, and it's a black background. So let's close that. And let's open up our sprites. So we're going to import some sprites. So we'll hit create, and we're going to name this sprite background 1. And let's go ahead and import here. And let's find our backgrounds. I believe it's under... oh yeah. There we go. So these are again our Kenny.nl assets. In our Space Shooter Redux folder, there's a backgrounds folder, and we're just gonna pull in this purple one here. Let's go ahead and open that, and we see it's purple, and there's some stars here. And we're gonna import another background and call it SPRBG2 for our second background. And we're going to import this one as well. And what I did is in our image editor, I got one of these free assets from Kenny.nl, and I just deleted the background color. I deleted the background color, but I left the stars. So when I open it, you'll see there's little stars here. You can't see too much, but there's little dots that'll come up just as if they were above the layer. We can also import another version of it here with the background. And then simply in the image editor, we can lower the opacity so you can still see the image underneath. It'll get a little darker on the background because you're still multiplying the lower color by the top color, but it will work if you just want to change the opacity. So I'll show you how to do that too. But for now, we'll use the transparent one, assuming that you're able to set that up. So we'll close this. And don't worry, this will all get really clear in a second. So we're going to open up our room that we're working on. And notice our player is still to the right, even though he shows up in the middle, because our code automatically moves him to about right here. So that's already set up for us. Now we want to go to our background layer. So remember our layers is in the top left. We're going to click on background. And just like our regular items, we can choose a sprite. So let's go ahead and choose our first sprite, and let's make it this purple background. And it's in the top left corner. We're going to tile it horizontally, so it goes all the way across, and we're going to tile it vertically, so it goes top to bottom. And we're actually going to change the vertical speed to something just to see what it looks like. So let's change this to 2 and see what happens. Let's hit play. We want to create the illusion of movement. Alright, so now we have a room with some stars that scroll down. And that's pretty cool, but we want to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more visually pleasing, I guess, or fun to look at. So let's add a little bit more speed to that and say, let's create another background, and we're going to call this background 2. And this is going to be above our other background. We're going to change the sprite to our transparent sprite that we saw before. We could already see the stars coming up over here. We're also going to tile that horizontally, and you see the stars go across. We're going to tile it vertically, and then we're going to change the vertical speed to something a little faster. Like last time was 4, so, 2, so we're going to choose 4. And if we hit play, this will add a little depth to our game and make it look a little more interesting. Look at that. Now we have what looks like a very interesting star field and all this other stuff. We can even add some speed to our X coordinate and get a little angle going, so it's kind of like, you know, I don't know, it looks cool. So I like the way this looks right now. It has a nice kind of fast movement kind of thing, so I'm going to leave it there. And let's go ahead and create a bullet. Why not? We have time. So let's create a new sprite. And we'll import an image. Go to our PNG files here. We'll go to lasers, and we're using our red plane, so let's choose a red laser. Let's choose this little one here. Yes. Now, again, we have to set our point of origin. So in this case, I don't want the bullet to hit when it's in the center. I want it to hit right when it's right at the tip, because that's our actual bullet. This is just supposedly the trail, right? So that's where I want it to hit. And for our collision mask, we're going to choose manual so that we get these little controls in the corners. And we're going to just put it out of the effect range. So this is the actual bullet itself, and that's the only part we want to actually set up a collision or a hit. We don't really want the trail to be able to do damage to people. So there's the sprite, and we're going to name this SPR laser. Great. Now we're going to want to create an object for the laser. So we're going to type obj laser, just for organization purposes, and we're going to change our sprite to the laser sprite. Now we have our sprite set, and we can add an event. We don't really need our laser to do much, except when we shoot it, go up, right? So let's do a create event. So right when you create the bullet, have it start moving up. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's set the direction. We could do jump to point and just do a negative Y amount to make it go up, or we can, and this would have to be in a step event, or we can actually set a direction and speed, which I'm going to show you now. So we're going to do our direction first and say we want it to move up, and now we have a direction. Now we want to set the speed, so we're going to go to movement and choose set speed, and it's in the direction of our direction that we just set, and we're going to go to 15. We'll just try that. And then let's go ahead and see and make sure that the bullet actually moves. So let's drag a bullet right here. Actually, we have to go to our instances layer first and then drag a bullet in. Okay, I'm just going to place it on our plane, so we're not going to create the bullet yet. It's just going to start there so I can see if it moves. Let this load, and it might go kind of fast, so we're going to have to keep an eye out to make sure that whether it works or not. Yep, and it's going up. So it went up and off the screen. So let's go back to our object laser, and let's add an event. We don't want a ton of these bullets making the game go slow once they go off the screen. So let's go ahead and choose our an other event and choose outside room. Now the great thing about this is once it goes out of the room, it's going to destroy it's going to do something, and we want it to destroy the instance. So that way when it goes out of your visible viewport, you're not still rendering that object and slowing the computer down. So we're just going to say when outside the room, destroy the instance. Easy as that. So now it's destroyed. So let's go back to our room and erase that guy. We don't need him there. We're going to create it in a different way. Let's go back to our object player, and we're going to add an event on when we press a button. So add an event, key down, space. So when we hit space, do something, right? So in this case, we're going to create an instance of a bullet, in this case, or a laser. So we're going to drag create instance, which is a little light bulb, into our key down space in our object player spot. And we're going to choose our laser. And we want this to spawn at x0, y0, but not of the room. We want it relative to the player, just as 0, 0 compared to the player. So we're going to hit relative on both of these, and that'll make the object laser spawn directly at the point of origin of the player where we set on the sprite. So that's good here. And let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. There's other steps you have to do, but we'll just see what this looks like. Alright, so we have our game, and we're shooting a ton of lasers, just a ton of them. So this is because as long as we're holding the button down, it's going to continue to create instances of these bullets. And we need to create some sort of code to stop this from happening so often, because obviously you're just OP. It's like a machine gun, which some of your weapons might want to be like this, but not your first weapon. So let's go ahead and exit the game again. And let's create a cooldown. Whenever you shoot something, it takes a couple seconds to come back, and that's what we call a cooldown in video games. So in our create event, let's create a cooldown. Let's find a signed variable, and let's just drag it in here. And we're going to name this laser cooldown. Okay, so now we have a laser cooldown. And we want it to be able to shoot every time it's at, let's say, 0. And we want it to start at 0 because we want to be able to shoot right when we hit space. So 0 is fine. Now that we've assigned it to 0, I want, when we hit space, create a bullet, and then assign a variable. And actually, let's do this first. We're going to make an if statement because we already have a variable that says laser cooldown is equal to 0. So, and that means it does not need a cooldown. So if we go to space, we'll say if laser cooldown, which you can see here, is less than or equal to 0, just in case it jumps past it, we want to create an instance. Now, this isn't the correct way to do it because this bar is on the left, which means that it's going to do both of these when we hit space. We only want it to create the instance if the laser's on cooldown. So we'll drag this over here to the right side, just like we did before. And now we have this little green line that indicates that this will only happen if this is less than or equal to 0. So now that we know it is 0, we know that it's going to create the instance, but we don't want it to keep doing that because it's always going to be 0. So let's create, let's assign another variable here and say after it creates the bullet, change laser cooldown to 15. Right? So now once you shoot, it's going to change to 15, and it's not going to shoot again until it's 0. So let's hit play. Let's make sure it should only shoot once, change to 15, and then not shoot anymore because we haven't told it to go back to 0. So let's try this out. So I shot once, and I can't shoot anymore. Great. So that works. But now we want it to slowly go back up to, or slowly go back down to 0, right? So we'll go to our step and say every frame of the game we want to change our variable laser cooldown, and if it's at 15 we want it to go to -1, right? So we'll put -1, and we'll say that that is we don't want it just to jump to -1 from 15 to -1. We want it to subtract 1 from 15, so we'll choose relative on that, and that means every frame of the game it's going to lower the number which is 15 from laser cooldown to 0. And even if it's 0, it's going to keep on going to the negative numbers, which is why we put less than or equal to 0. That way, even if it's in a negative number, we can still continue that. We can go a step further, that we can say an if statement and say if laser cooldown is greater than 0, assign variable laser cooldown -1, and that means that this will only happen when this is bigger than 0. If it's less than 0, it just stops, and that way we don't keep running too many scripts. It's just good to stop too many things from going at the same time. So let's try this out and see what kind of cooldown system this is. Or how long the cooldown takes, as you say, between bullets, so that we can adjust that if needed. Okay, so we have our game, and that's actually a pretty good pace. 1, 2, 3, 4, and look at that. So that's actually a really good pace, and what's happening is the timer is set to 0. We're able to shoot. The cooldown goes back to 15, and we're not able to shoot until it's back at 0. And every frame of the game, it goes down -1. And if we remember correctly, our frames per second is 60 frames per second, which means that at 15 frames, we're able to shoot about 4 times a second, which is about right, it seems like. It depends on the frame rate of your computer. I mean, I'm recording in different frame rates, and things speed up and slow down based on your computer speed, but it's about 4 bullets per second, which is great. And if we wanted to create another iteration of this weapon, we could easily just duplicate it and change the 15 to something like 7.5, for example, and it would double the speed, and we could call that laser 2 or machine gun or whatever we want to call it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will be back next time with more. All right, hope you have a good day. Peace.